Alright, we're back with the resto mod of this Datsun L24. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the timing cover and by installing the seal. Nice brand new seal. You know, to put some ultra black oil resistant gasket maker on the outside diameter of it. Just use it sparingly, because the more squeeze out you have, the more you're going to have to clean later. Just going to use a parallel to install this so it's nice and flush. Then wipe off the squeeze out. Look at that. Nice and tidy. Okay, using more of this gasket maker, we're going to stick it up in the corners here where the timing cover mates up with the engine block and the cylinder head. This is a notorious leak path for oil. Alright, after trimming and fitting the timing cover gaskets, I'm just going to use some of this Permatex form a gasket on here. You guys ever use this stuff? I do. I use it for almost everything I can. Not sponsored. I just like it. If you guys have a favorite sealant that you use that, you know, works every single time, I'd like to know about it. Just gonna hang this up on the pins. Come on, get on there. Just like mouth breathing all over the place. Sorry about that. Now look at this. In case the seal fails, water will leak out instead of getting dumped right into your timing cover. You have that little hole right there. If that leaks, it means that your seal's failing. Stick some moly grease on the inside diameter of this oil seal. Now to do a final install. Gonna have to tap this into place. It's got some tapered alignment pins. Brand new stainless steel hardware. And can't forget about these cap screws here. They're easy to forget about, but they draw the timing cover up to the head. Ooh, brand new water pump. Let's check it out. Oh, little studs for your pulley. Yeah, check out this bad boy. Oh, even longer studs if you have a bigger pulley. Yeah, look at that cast impeller. Solid construction. This is a nice water pump. Pretty stoked about this, boys. Just gonna slather the old water pump gasket with more Permatex form a gasket. Let's get this sucker installed without making a mess. You guys like my cardboard? Let's just get those pins aligned and slip this on there. Yeah, she torqued. Okay, let's put our little stud boys in here. So I'm going to be looking for a very specific stud standout for this. I want just only a few fully developed threads protruding through the top of the nuts. So I'm just going to put them in by hand, put in the spacer, put in the pulley, And I'm going to use one of the original nuts to kind of gauge the distance that those need to be screwed into. I don't want to bottom them out because I might not have enough threads left to screw it all in or fasten it all together once I did that. So just going to use this whole stack as a gauge. Some of you guys might want to mic all this stuff out, measure it all out, do the math, and then you can know exactly what your stud standout is. I'm just going to do it the caveman way. Alright. Let's flip this upside down for hopefully the last time. This is always super sketchy to do. It's really top heavy at this point. Clean off all my surfaces. Gotta get this oil pan installed. So I didn't have a gasket for the oil pickup, so I gotta make my own. I'm just gonna go ahead and once again use this Forma gasket to do like a little bit of a stamp impression so I can get the correct inside diameter. I don't feel like getting any of my drafting tools out. Give that a little wipe down, nice and shiny. You guys didn't know this was going to be an arts and crafts video, did you? Oh yeah, she lined up. Alright, super important step, install the oil pickup. So I'm using some new hardware for this. Not going to use any gasket sealer or anything like that. Just dry gasket. Now after you get done unfolding your oil pan gasket, you know that the manufacturer decided to fold it up like an origami art piece. So while that's relaxing, I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this down with some solvent, clear off any grease or anything. More ultra black, put it over the seams. Don't want that oil creeping through there, just in case there's some unevenness. When I sent this block to the machine shop with the cylinder head and the timing cover, so everything was kind of machined to fit, but still, as a precaution, I'm going to go ahead and hit the seams with some old ultra black. Alright, so I'm just going to put some of this non-hardening Permatex Forma gasket on here. Not sponsored, I just like this stuff. Everybody's got a favorite, and this one's mine. So just going to stick some ultra black on the oil pan itself, and then kind of smear that around. I want the gasket to stick to the oil pan, not to the engine block. So for whatever reason, if I have to drop the oil pan, the gasket will stay on that, and you know, it would reduce the risk of damaging it during uninstallation or whatever. Okay, final install. Now to put in all 47 fasteners or whatever it is, I'm going to use an O-ring pick to kind of help push the gasket out of the thread holes, and then maybe clean a little bit of globs, some squeeze out. So I'm going to save you guys the torment of watching me do a star pattern torque on every one of these fasteners, and just go ahead and fast forward it to the walk around. And there we go, doing the final torque pass. Now I gotta torque this magnetic drain plug. It's not gonna click loud. There you go. So using some of the old flywheel fasteners, we're gonna stick those in to act as a brace so we can torque up our harmonic balancer and our camshaft gear. Just like so. Alright, and then flip her back around upright for the last time, and we're going to go ahead and put in our oil pump. Make sure these little lines line up. This is kind of a different setup for me. you can't drive this oil pump to prime the system using a oil pump priming tool. So you gotta prime it at install, but then I'm gonna end up installing the motor without any spark plugs or anything like that, and then using the starter to rotate the engine. Just gonna put some moly grease on the tang of the oil pump shaft here. Also gonna put some on those gear teeth. Okay, let's make a mess. Oh, Jesus, too much. Just a little dabble, do you? Let's go ahead and wipe all this excess off. It was just a mess. Got our gasket on. Dots lined up. Just nice and easy. Gotta install this. Then guide that upper tang to the distributor hole. And there we go. Oh, I'm a tooth off. Let me fix that. Should all torqued. Slap in this distributor. All right. Let's go ahead and install the old ground for the distributor. We're just going to use the thermostat housing as a ground. Get that tucked. Brand new dipstick. And installed. So putting on a new gasket. This is the water neck for the cooling system. Getting that torqued. And torque. Got me a Wix 51521 oil filter. Gonna go ahead and put some fresh oil around the seal. I am not gonna pre-fill this oil filter because this motor is brand new. Everything about it is brand new. Even new oil is contaminated. So dumping it down the center, basically just make sure that the first amount of oil going into your engine is unfiltered oil. I don't recommend it. I don't do it. You guys can do whatever you want because it's your stuff and you can use it how you want. But I am not going to pre-fill an oil filter with potentially contaminated oil. And this is the oil pressure sender. Going to toss a wrench on it here. Get our engine mount brackets installed. And then torque down our alternator bracket. Alright. Torque spec I'm using is good and tight. Other motor mount bracket, torqued. Gonna install this plug. Keeps the water in the motor, keeps it from coming out. So here's that part that I was talking about earlier. Installed those fasteners so I could put this brass screwdriver in here and then use that to keep the motor from rotating. Getting these suckers torqued up. There we go, little click. And then we're just gonna back it off a little bit so it'll release tension on our brass rod. There you go. And just throw it on the ground. Throw it on the ground. Now I'm setting my valve gaps. I am using the camshaft manufacturer's recommended gap. Otherwise, follow your heart. You know, use your factory service manuals, your Haynes manual, your Chilton's manual. Just make sure you are setting your valve geometry in accordance with either the manufacturer's specification if you're using an aftermarket or the Nissan factory service manual recommendation. So got to put more of this stuff on, more assembly lube. Can't have too much assembly lube. If you guys watched my previous videos, you would see that I already put some of that stuff on. So this is that Schneider Racing Cams Formula 2 additive. I'm going to go ahead and mix it with a quart of oil and then dump that around. Just kind of lubricate everything. So remember what I said about priming the oil filter with oil. Well, so the oil filter filters the oil before it gets pumped into the bearings, and then once it goes through the bearings and the camshaft and all the oil journals, then it gets pumped out here into the cylinder head where it falls down this hole and down your timing chain. So me dumping fresh oil over the top of this is not the same as pumping it directly into your journal bearings. But I'm also open for discussion on this topic, so let me know in the comments, what would you do? Would you just dump it over the camshaft and everything, or would you just fill up your oil sump and just let the engine just kind of pump it around on its own? Alright, we're going to get our valve cover gasket, and then we're going to temporarily install our valve cover. It's all cleaned up, you know, nice and sparkly on the inside. Spent a lot of time cleaning the inside of this thing. But I don't want any debris or anything to fall down inside of there when I'm installing this motor. But after I get it all hooked up and ready to rotate, then I am going to be removing that valve cover just so, you know, I can see when the oil is coming out through the camshaft. Let's go ahead and plop in our alternator here. These are the final nuts for this pulley. I decided to go with ones that had a flanged washer built into them. Put on a fresh V-belt. Nice and tensioned. Okay, let's get rid of this engine stand. This thing's sketchy. It's bobbing around everywhere anytime I do anything with the motor. I'm really looking forward to getting rid of this engine stand. The light's at the end of the tunnel there, boys. Alright, once it's floating, I'm gonna go ahead and take this thing off. There we go. Rest it on some cardboard. Let's get rid of this. Yeah. Alright, new pilot bushing. So this is a brass bushing. Can't really use metal or steel or anything stronger than that to install it, so I'm using a wooden handle off of a wire brush as an insulator to install. And then a few little love taps with the old drift, and then it is installed and it wasn't mushroomed. So something that you should consider doing before you send your engine block off to the machine shop, and that's removing all of the old alignment pins and dowels and whatnot. Doing it at that stage makes it for a less sketch operation. So this one turned out to be a pain. I'm using a machinist wedge with a chip in the middle that kind of just rock it back and forth until it works its way out. There we go. Look at that. That took a little while. Let's go ahead and pound in the new one. Then we can move on to our scatter plate shield thing. finesse it on there. There we go, nice and tight. This is a lightweight flywheel. If you are replacing the flywheel, make sure that your alignment pins are installed before you go ahead and install this on your motor. And we're just going to make sure there's no fingerprints, oil, grease, debris on any of our friction surfaces. Put in our little alignment tool. Make sure that the flywheel side is indicated right there, flywheel side. That goes towards the flywheel. Alright, with all of your alignment pins installed, go ahead and install your pressure plate. Now we are going to be checking our alignment tool periodically while we're torquing this down for binding, because if it starts binding, then you got to take it apart, realign, and redo it. It's a process. So starting off with hand tight, and it's loose, and it goes back in just fine without any binding. So I'm just going to finish tightening this down, and then once it's seated, check it again before final torque, and then one more time after final torque. Alright, nice and smooth. Okay, final torque, last check, and nice and smooth. Alright, there we have it, Nissan L24 fully resto modded. If you like what you see, or if you have any, comments, just leave them down below, and thanks for watching.